43. Remember, I put this into a court of law. Is it not so that the Encyclopedia Judaica, page 798, and published in Israel by Jews, states anti-Semitism was branded as being counter-revolutionary in nature, and persons participating in pogroms or instigating them were outlawed by a special decree issued by the Council of Commissars in July of 1918, signed and personally amended by Lenin to sharpen its tone. A statement against anti-Semitism made by Lenin in March 1919 was one of the rare occasions in which his voice was put on a phonograph record to be used in mass campaigns against the counter-revolutionary incitement against Jews. Now that is a very interesting quote. That's in Encyclopedia Judaica. Again, it's all in a court document I put in. I put this into the court at a hearing saying that you're a Jewish temple and you can't try me. And I was exactly right. Not that they were going to listen to it. But anyway, let's move on. Point 44. And Seva Plok, who always, he's an asshole, but he does speak the truth pretty boldly. Just remember that. Remember, the information I got was from Jews, some of whom have lived in Israel. Just remember that. Some of the greatest fighters, and we'll go over several of them, including Professor Israel Shahak, of course, Jewish History, Jewish Religion, The Weight of 3,000 Years. Incredible book. We owe a great debt to Professor Israel Shahak, a chemist, born and bred in Israel itself. Just remember that. So when you start inciting and not being careful with your words, you're doing the work of Bibi. Point 44. Is it not true that Seva Plokha wrote in the popular mainstream Ynet News opinion that Stalin's Jews were the greatest mass murderers of our time? And is it not true that over 20 million Orthodox Christians and Catholics and Eastern Rite Catholics from Russia, the Baltic states, Poland and Ukraine were variously starved to death, worked to death, executed, and simply disappeared under the Jewish-inspired, funded and carried out Bolshevik revolution, which resulted in over 40,000 Christian monks, nuns and priests being murdered and over 20,000 places of Christian worship burnt down, blown up and or turned into pig pens, and also libraries, I might add. And is it not so that there is not a single account of a rabbi or human being of the Jewish faith being persecuted for their belief in a supernatural God? And is it not so that not a single account exists on the public record of a single synagogue being damaged or destroyed in the Jewish Bolshevik sphere of influence? 100% true. In 1924, they built the Grand Synagogue in Moscow, and that was the height of the Christian persecution. Jews were not rounded up and given a tenner for having an icon of Christ and Mary under their pillows. No, they went into the gulags because they dissed Stalin and got pissed off with the system. Then they filled up the gulags too. But I need to understand that if you are going to talk about this not being a Jewish revolution, then how the hell did you build the Grand Synagogue in Moscow in 1924?
This statement needs some clarification. In 2007, I found a PDF document from a Moscow-based travel agency. It was urging Israeli Jews to visit the Grand Synagogue in Moscow. It stated it was built or rebuilt in 1924. Remember, this is the height of the Christian persecution in the Soviet Union. That PDF and webpage was soon removed when I posted it to a public forum. It is almost impossible to find good, accurate reports of the persecution of the Soviet Union's Jews at the height of the Christian persecution, particularly in the 1920s. Here's an extract from the book by American historian Edwin Shoemaker, 1939. The book is called Democracy and World Dominion. 15 years after the Bolshevik Revolution was launched to carry out the Marxist program, the editor of the American Hebrew could write, quote, "According to such information that the writer could secure while in Russia a few weeks ago, not one Jewish synagogue has been torn down, as have hundreds, perhaps thousands of the Greek Catholic churches. In Moscow and other large cities, one can see Christian churches in the process of destruction. The government needs the location for a large building." End quote. That's the American Hebrew, November 18, 1932, page 12. We should also add that nothing makes right the vile behaviour of the Bolsheviks towards religion in general. The behaviour and hypocrisy of the so-called religious faithful and their institutions did not help. While churches were bathed in gold and the religious elite lived well, people starved in Tsarist Russia. As it is written in the Christian New Testament, Romans 2:24, "God's name is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you," end quote. Meaning the poor behaviour of the Israelites, and that applies to all who proclaim some religious piety. Banker-funded political movements like communism could never find a foothold if the elites around the world did their job and served the people instead of themselves and their friends.
Spare me. What more proof do you damn well need? Stalin's Jews. We mustn't forget that some of the greatest murderers of our modern times were Jewish. This is Seva Plokha. He's actually done some good articles. He did another one in Ynet News, Seva Plokha. He basically said, if we as Jews keep running around ripping off the Gentiles a national sport, that's what he wrote, talking about Jews' behaviour, Israelis in particular behaviour in India and other places. He said, we're going to get in the shit, basically. There's going to be a reaction. So he's pretty brutally honest. Just remember that. Now, he's an Israeli/Jewish writer. And us, the Jews, an Israeli student finishes high school without ever hearing the name Gerhard Yagoda, the greatest Jewish murderer of the 20th century, the GPU's deputy commander and the founder and commander of the NKVD. Yagoda diligently implemented Stalin's collectivization orders and is responsible for the deaths of at least 10 million people. His Jewish deputies established and managed the Gulag system. After Stalin no longer viewed him favorably, Yagoda was demoted and executed and was replaced as chief hangman in 1936 by Yezhov, the, quote, bloodthirsty dwarf. Yezhov was not Jewish, but he was blessed with an active Jewish wife. In his book Stalin, Court of the Red Star, Jewish historian Sebag Montefiore writes that during the darkest period of terror, when the communist killing machine worked in full force, Stalin was surrounded by beautiful, young Jewish women. Now, Mossad, when the hell am I getting my hot Mossad assassin? I've been very upset about this. All I've got is a very ugly ethnic Chinese Malay ladyboy, and I'm not happy about this. Stalin's close associates and loyalists included members of the Central Committee and Politburo. Lazar Kaganovich. Montefiore characterizes him as the, quote, first Stalinist, and adds that those starving to death in Ukraine, an unparalleled tragedy in the history of humankind aside from the Nazi horrors and Mao's terror in China, did not move Kaganovich. Many Jews sold their soul to the devil of the communist revolution and have blood on their hands for eternity. We'll mention just one more. Leonid Reichman, head of the NKVD Special Department and the organization's chief interrogator, who was a particularly cruel sadist. Why are we missing someone? Hell, I've forgotten his name. You all know who I mean. Who's the other guy? Damn, my memory's gone blank. For God's sake, The Death of Stalin, the greatest comedy ever, and I can't remember his name. Anyway. In 1934, according to published statistics, 38.5% of those holding the most senior posts in the Soviet security apparatuses were of Jewish origin. They too, of course, were gradually eliminated in the next purges. In a fascinating lecture at a Tel Aviv University convention this week, Dr. Helfand described the waves of Soviet terror as a, quote, carnival of mass murder, quote, fantasy of purges, and, quote, messianism of evil, end quote. Turns out Jews too, when they become captivated by messianic ideology, can become great murderers, among the greatest known by modern history. Thank you, Seva Plokha. Remember, Seva Plokha said that I didn't. I'm not using this as a tool to incite. I'm trying to inform based on my behaviour, my wording and careful use of words and intent, based on also all the recordings in private that they keep on us. You'll see that this is about getting this shit done in a criminal conspiracy fashion, with the lawful authorities mounting investigations and indicting guilty parties. Is it not so that a team of, this is point 45, is it not so that a team of American Jewish communists passed the USA's secrets of the atom bomb to the Jewish communist-controlled Soviet Union after the Second World War, enabling the latter country to explode its first atom bomb in 1948? We're getting into the Silver Master spy ring. From left to right, Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, the spy ring leaders, executed at Sing Sing prison; David Greenglass, scientist at Los Alamos; Theodore Holzberg, scientist at Los Alamos; and Harry Gold, courier for the group, to their Soviet handler. Point 46, excuse me for that.